Sony has announced the Xperia M4 Aqua, the first of the waterproof Sonys that relies on internal proofing rather than plastic flaps. Phew. It's IP68 certified, dust tight, and can last for up to 30 minutes in a metre of water. The M4 Aqua is a decent mid-ranger with a 5.2-inch 720p screen, a Snapdragon 615 chipset and 2GB of RAM. There's the usual 13-megapixel Sony camera sensor coupled with wide-angle optics, 16GB of storage plus microSD, LTE, Android 5 out of the box, and a 2400 mAh battery. Samsung, as I'm sure you heard, announced the S6 and S6 Edge, major departures from the company's usual design and philosophy in that they feature sealed storage, sealed batteries, glass backs, and compared to the S5, zero waterproofing. Seems like it's chasing the iPhone premium market. The prices are comparable. Specs are high with next-gen Exynos processors, Quad HD screens, 3GB of RAM, 16-megapixel camera with OIS, and thankfully Qi charging. There's a choice of finishes, of internal storage starting at 32GB, and of course of model. The Edge version has curved, well, edges, and will also take the edge off your bank balance. HTC's One range got a new flagship, though don't talk about the E9 yet, with the M9, a refinement of the M8 with better grip in the hand and a traditional high megapixel camera on the back. No OIS though, sadly. Still staying 1080p for the screen was the right thing to do in terms of battery life, I reckon. The M9's due in for review first from the stuff mentioned here, so watch this space. Over and above what I may or may not brandish on screen later in this show, the best-selling king of the budget Android, the Moto E, just got updated with a 2015 model now with a front-facing camera, not before time, in addition to its 5-megapixel camera around the rear, plus a 4.5-inch now QHD screen and the usual LTE Snapdragon 200 processor, 1GB of RAM, and it launches with Android 5. It's already only £110 or so, and you can bet to find this on pay-as-you-go in the UK for a lot less than £100 very soon. Having been forced to set up numerous smartphones from scratch over the years as part of my reviewing activities, I love it in part as there's the freshness of a virgin device waiting for instructions, and I dread it in part because I know that it takes time to really truly set up a device so that every account, every setting, every game position, every data file is all present and correct. And this got me thinking. I've written elsewhere about the commoditization of smartphones, and we've talked about the subject a lot on the Phone Show Chat podcast, and I thought the idea worth expanding here briefly. You see, not only can a mid-tier sub-£200 device now do 98% of what a flagship does, and sometimes better, begging the question why so many people pay top dollar, there's another huge factor. The value in your smartphone experience is not shiny, lust aside, as in the physical hardware, the chipsets, the cameras, the screens, all burning a devaluing hole in your pocket. As I see it, the value in your smartphone experience these days, given the aforementioned commoditization, is in your PIM data, your collection of linked social and mail and service accounts, your purchased applications, your own highly personal regime of how a start screen or home screen looks. Add all these up and you've got your smartphone experience. Whether it's hosted on a £500 Google Nexus 6 or on a £130 Nexus 6 Lite here, both behave almost identically from email to social to media to games, and it's all about your stuff, your contacts, your media, and so on. Hopefully meaning that once you realise this, you may not need to keep dipping into your wallet for the next shiny flagship, since you really can often do with something a lot cheaper. What's that? You want to know more about this Google Nexus 6 Lite? Oh, go on then. I'm being a little naughty since this is in fact the new Motorola Moto G 2nd generation. But seeing as the design, the fit, the finish, speaker configuration and software are all so close to the Mountain View flagship, I think Nexus 6 Lite does sound about right. You may remember I reviewed the Moto G and the Moto G 4G last year on the Phone Show. I concluded they were terrific value for money, rather dismissing the upcoming 5-inch screen 2nd generation device because it didn't have 4G, i.e. LTE. Well, stop press. There's now a 4G version too as of March 2015, and I was utterly wrong to dismiss this 5-inch screened variant. Why? Because the Nexus 6 is now out and demonstrably too big for most people. While the Moto X, normally what I'd describe as the Nexus 6 Lite, only has the one speaker. The Moto G 2nd Gen here has the full complement of stereo front speakers, top and bottom, and they're great, possibly even the same components as on the full 6. Yes, I'm a bit of a sucker for good speakers, but trust me, load up some video and watch it on the excellent 5-inch LCD screen, enjoying the loud stereo sound, and you'll appreciate why I'm enthusing. This is a bit of Gary Moore. Hopefully I won't get pulled off YouTube. I've got to get myself a gold Les Paul one day. Other components are decent too. Don't get too hung up on the 1 gig of RAM inside here. There's 500 megabytes free after booting with Lollipop Android 5.0.2 here, rather surprising me. So really plenty of room for maneuver. Or the 8GB internal storage, just bung in a micro SD to expand it, something you can't do on the Nexus 6 or Moto X. And the Snapdragon 400 quad-core chipset, while on paper less than cutting edge, perform perfectly, even with the hungriest games like Real Racing 3 here. Finally, the screen is 720p as you might expect at this price, but it's perfectly fine for most eyes. Full RGB resolution and not pentile, which helps a lot. And visibility outdoors is much better than on budget handsets. The camera is another possible compromise area, but the 8 megapixel unit here is very good. Has auto HDR, tap to capture, and a myriad of modes and options that you may never need. And results, as you can see here, are right up with mid-tier and even some flagship phone cameras. Just the lack of OIS put this obviously behind the cutting edge. And in very weak winter sunshine, this is 720p, limited by the chipset I'm afraid, but it's full stereo sound. Sample footage on the Moto G 2014, i.e. the 2nd generation. As with the G 2nd Gen's bigger sister devices, the Moto X and Nexus 6, the battery is sealed, this time at 2070 mAh. But this is enough for almost 2 days of use on a charge, if you're careful here. In terms of software, as is well known by now, Motorola have standardized on stock Android as per the Nexus devices, but with a handful of Motorola utilities added to the mix. Assist helps with configuration when driving, asleep, in a meeting and so on, with a mix of settings plus a migrate tool that wirelessly copies content to or from the phone, from and to other smartphones, if you see what I mean. Plus all the usual Google goodies, though the older Quick Office is included rather than the newer Docs and Sheets, which is a slightly curious, and you get both gallery and photos, which also is a bit odd. Still, no complaints all round. Pick up the Google Nexus 6, then pick up the Moto G 2nd Gen, and I promise you'll get a feeling of deja vu. Yes, the G is obviously lower spec, but they're clearly from exactly the same mould. And the vastly cheaper device is much more pocket-friendly in the physical sense, and being designed for Lollipop from the beginning, just as the Nexus 6 was, it runs Android 5.0 beautifully. The Nexus 6 Lite, as I'm going to carry on calling it, is a perfect device for almost everyone, belying its modest specifications. Would I pick it over the full Nexus 6? You know, I think I might. And I'd save £360 in the process. This is the Lumia 435. It's chunky, it's cheap. Let's just not bother with the rest. It's under £40. It's a Lumia. It's a cheap Lumia. See you next time.